everybody? Welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf with you. A great show for you guys today on this Friday afternoon. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have some fun Trump stories. Of course we are. Of course we are. But not just that. We got a lot more. We've got, of course, indefinite detention for immigrants. We also have Republicans going after some of their lawmakers that dare to dissent. That's a fascinating story. We've got Brett Kavanaugh. More on that as well. We got Bernie Sanders and teaming up with Ro Khanna to write an article against Jeff Bezos. That's fun. And we have another minimum wage study. We're going to talk about that. So we got good news, we got fun news, we got terrible news. It is the usual mix, but it's going to be a great, great show. So, before I get into it, a couple of announcements. For one, we have changed the TYT Nation Twitter handle. Away from that, we are now at ATN on TYT. So, new Twitter handle, ATN on TYT. That's Around the Nation. So if you guys could follow me there, if you're on the tweeters, you should do that. Also, we are looking into changing our Patreon away from TYT Nation as well to, well, me. So hopefully soon we'll be able to make that change, and we'll have Patreon that is more, I guess, personal towards me, because that's generally who you would be supporting, me, and mostly, of course, me making the show better for you guys. So that's what I want to do. So exciting stuff, kind of doing a little bit of re-gearing and things like that to make the show and to make the channel better. And to make it a little easier to distinguish me from the Young Turks. Not that Young Turks is a bad thing, but like I said, to avoid any further confusion, because I'm sure there's a lot of that. But anyway, so, well, look, I haven't made the name change yet, but you can still support me at Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, support the channel. And you can also help the show out by using the Super Chats. So please do that if you have a comment or suggestion or anything like that. That helps us out a great deal. Okay, so that said, let's get to the fun stuff. Ridiculous fun Trump stories. Then we get into more serious stuff. So let's begin. So President Trump brags that he has the best words, the greatest words. Although sometimes it gets to the point where he can't even say them. Case in point, he had a rally in Montana on Thursday and ran into a little bit of a problem with a particular word. Let's take a look.
The latest act of resistance is the op-ed published in the failing New York Times by an anonymous, really an anonymous, gutless coward. You just look. He was, nobody knows who the hell he is, or she, although they put he, but probably that's a little disguise. That means it's she. But for the sake of our national security, the New York Times should publish his name at once. I think their reporters should go and investigate who it is. That would actually be a good scoop.
Anonymous. Hey, man, look, I don't know. I don't think that's a difficult word. Anonymous. Not anonymous. Okay, whatever. Look, we're having a little bit of fun, but also I kind of feel like we might be having too much fun at his expense, because there is a good chance, and this is going to turn dark, that our president is mentally damaged. So, I mean, look, I'm not saying that this is proof enough to say that he's mentally damaged, but it just kind of adds to the mountain of, you could say, evidence, where people are saying, like, I think our president is mentally, like, he's not all there. There's something missing. There's something missing. And look, I'm saying that because why else would there be an inside effort inside of the White House to frustrate parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations by Republicans? People that agree with this agenda, that are like, oh, don't get me wrong, I love everything policy-wise that has happened, and I think it's making America great again. But still, we have to be the adults in the room. Again, this person has no intellectual curiosity. He goes on strange rants, can't pay attention, and, you know, like, says the wrong thing, says the wrong word, has some really ridiculous ideas, doesn't know what things mean, and now can't even say the word anonymous. And not only that, but this led to the discussion of the 25th Amendment in that op-ed. Why even bring it up? It's because the president is mental. And I'm actually starting to feel a little bit bad for him. Again, if it were this alone, okay, no problem. Words are hard. I misspell words, misspeak all the time, okay? I say the wrong word, or I say the word wrongly, and it was terrible, right? And sometimes that happens. Sometimes I have issues with words. But when you look back and you take everything in context and look at the big picture, it appears that the president might have some serious mental issues. And that's not a good thing. Okay. That's all on that. A little bit of musing here. Okay. Let's move on. Let's go to Lindsey Graham. So among some of the things that we learned from Bob Woodward's new book, that isn't even out yet, by the way, is that Trump aides know that he is a child, know that he's not necessarily there, and have been doing things to prevent him from doing some of the worst things. Now, if you thought the policies that he put forward were already bad, and I absolutely do, just think of the things that he thought of that the aides have actually put a stop to. Insane, right? Now, some of the things that they've done is disregarding their orders. For example, McMaster, after, for example, the Syria had allegedly launched chemical weapons. Trump flew into a rage. He was like, oh my God, you kill them. Kill them all. Kill them fucking all of them. McMaster's like, ignore what, ignore the president. We will not be doing that. There are other great examples. You also have Gary Cohn literally stealing documents off his desk. Now, that was confirmed in that letter, or I should say, this entire thing is confirmed in that letter from the anonymous top White House official who recently penned an op-ed against Trump that's got him raging. Now, among those ways of apparently reining in the Mad King, they also apparently tapped senators. One of them is Lindsey Graham. Huh. Now, according to the Washington Post, White House aides wishing to manipulate the president, very key word there, would provide talking points to Senator Lindsey Graham or Bob Corker before golf outings with Trump in hopes of preventing the president from making rash or disastrous policy decisions. Very interesting. Now, the Post writes that White House legislative aides would prep them on helpful messages they were trying to share or disasters they were trying to divert, according to one former senior administration official. And a current senior administration official did defend the practice by saying, well, yeah, but no, that's standard staff work. I mean, we do this already. Okay, look, to be fair, yeah, probably. I mean, imagine, you know, in the Obama administration, Obama, of course, went golfing in Fox News. Every time he went golfing, oh my God, how dare you go golfing, Mr. President, when you could be working? And then silence, of course, about Donald Trump's consistent golfing, but whatever. That's Fox News for you. Okay, so you go in those outings, you go with senators, and they're like, hey, maybe this would be a good idea, maybe this would be a bad idea. I'll give you some counsel, I'll give you some advice from what I see in my expertise. That's perfectly normal. And that sounds like something that, of course, would happen. But with Trump, it's a little bit different. Because here you are having to rein in the child. Again, this is trying to rein in the Mad King and prevent him from doing something completely disastrous. So that is fascinating. Now, this would also explain, and I'm going to get a little conspiratorial on you guys, why Lindsey Graham is suddenly far more pro-Trump than he was before. Speculation, right? So what if Lindsey Graham is only sucking up to the president, which he had back in 2016 referred to as this way, quote, I think he's a kook, I think he's crazy, I think he's unfit for office. Now, more than a year later, it's like, Donald Trump is the greatest. What are you guys talking about? He's totally fit for office. And by the way, look, here's the thing. It's easy to say that Lindsey Graham doesn't have a spine, was born without a spine. That is fair. That could absolutely be true. Or he could be sucking up to the president in order to manipulate him, which, again, we've already have proof of that's happening. And we've already seen evidence that this has happened before, that he is incredibly easy to manipulate. Remember, all you need to do to manipulate Trump is to say nice things about him, and more importantly, defend him well on television, especially against a Russia investigation. Now, what has Lindsey Graham been doing lately? He has been defending him on the Russia investigation. In fact, he has called this investigation absolutely political and corrupt. Oh, no. Now, while they were out golfing, by the way, back to them going out and being golf buddies, and of course him using that status as a golf buddy to go and corral some of his worst instincts. On the Russia investigation, Graham said that he told Trump that he has so far saw zero evidence of the president colluding with Russia, and said, quote, I told the president, I know you don't like it. I know you feel put upon. And there's no evidence, no collusion, no collusion. But this is the key. You just got to ride it out. So don't fire Mueller. Don't fire any of the investigators. Don't shut down the investigation. I know you feel put upon, and I believe I agree with you 100%. Witch hunt, no collusion, no collusion. But you got to let it go. But you got to let it keep going on. You can't end that investigation. Fascinating. Look, maybe he does actually believe that you should, that the investigation is a witch hunt. Maybe he does believe that, right? Or maybe he's sucking it up, or sucking up to Trump in the hopes that he will allow Mueller to continue the investigation and find a way to remove him. I don't know. I don't know. This is an interesting theory, but it's just a theory. Now, there's one more thing that is kind of hilarious in a bit of a sad way. The report goes on to state that former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus would backburner Trump's request for someone to be fired or policies be put into place by telling the president it would happen next week, then dropping it entirely, knowing Trump would have forgotten what he had asked for. Oh, how sad is that? Oh, hey, Mr. President, what do you want me to do? Oh, you want me to fire the entire communications director or communications department for poorly defending you on TV? I'll go get right on that next week. I mean, I'm really booked up this week, so it's going to have to be next week. And then it never happens. And the idiot doesn't even notice. He never follows up. He's not there. He gets too busy tweeting something. That is not somebody who's mentally there. That is not somebody who is mentally sound, who just forgets about some of the orders that he gives a week later, sometimes even less than a week. How sad is that? How sad is that people either no longer listen to him, in the case of McMaster, or call him an idiot in the case of John Kelly, or they know how to manipulate him. into doing what they want. Donald Trump has absolutely no friends there. And now, if he weren't such a horrible person, I might actually feel bad for him. But one thing I think is clear, at least to me, he needs help. But before he can get help, we got to get him out of the White House. I know that brings a whole lot of problems with Mike Pence. One battle at a time, man. But we cannot let the Mad King continue to reign. Okay. All right. Moving on. Okay. Let's do this one. Okay. Now, as President Trump continues to deal with an insurrection in the White House, Republican lawmakers are looking to crush dissent in their own house. Now, Representative Austin Scott had earlier pitched an idea to the House Steering Committee. Now, that is the House Republican Steering Committee. Apparently, they make appointments to different committees within the Republican House. So they decide who's going to sit on what committee, and who gets those really, really good, really important appointments. Now, Scott said, hey, here's an idea. We need to punish Republicans who do not vote among party lines or sign discharge petitions. Now, those are very important things. I'll explain what that is. But that's going to matter a lot, especially considering some of the contentious legislation and really how close some of the legislation actually gets to passing. Now, the resolution would require the steering committee to review whether changes should be made to a lawmaker's committee assignments if they vote against a rule, which sets the stage for a floor debate on legislation and is almost always passed along party lines. If they support a discharge petition, which is a tool to force floor votes with 218 signatures and circumvent leadership. Now, there is one thing that the leadership does not like, and it's when you bypass them. Now, not only that, but this rule would actually force committee chairs to either vote on this legislation, right? Vote with the party, or lose their leadership. Gone. You are gone. Out. You're not going to vote with the party? You're not going to vote lockstep with us? Say goodbye to your committee chair appointment. Step out of line, you're going to be in big, big trouble. Can it be more clear that this is a Republican attempt to crush dissent in their ranks? Now, let me go to a quote here from John Shimkus, right? Now, John Shimkus is the member of the steering panel, and he talked to the Hill and told them there'd be an ability to say, if this passes, we believe that you're on a committee, not a committee, but a committee. We expect a little more out of folks. That would then start the process of saying, you can vote however you want, but maybe you should reconsider the committee that you're on. Oh, do whatever you want, but boy, it sure would be a shame if you had a vote that didn't agree with us or that we don't agree with and lost your committee assignment. Sure hate for that to happen to you, buddy. Better vote with us. The message is, we're coming for you. Toe the party line, or else, basically, there will be no more Mavericks. There will be no dissent. We are done with that. Fascinating. Now, the reason that they're looking at this in the run-up to the midterms is they actually want to control not some of their more extreme members. Now, again, this would kind of make sense if, hey, the party establishment is tired of these, far-right, crazy people driving us to legislation that is never going to pass, that makes us look terrible. I could understand if they were doing this for that reason. But they're actually doing it for the opposite reason. They actually want to corral some of their more centrist Republican members. Earlier this year, Scott had stood up during a GOP conference meeting and called on leadership to punish lawmakers who signed discharge petitions or vote against rules, two Republican sources told The Hill at the time. So this isn't the first time he's come up with this. However, Scott's push came in response to an insurgent effort from centrist Republicans who were trying to force a series of contentious immigration votes on the House floor using a discharge petition. The moderate lawmakers had also threatened to torpedo a rule that would bring a conservative immigration bill from House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte to the floor, unless they also got a guaranteed vote on moderate immigration legislation. Now that legislation, the Goodlatte bill, was incredibly draconian, incredibly conservative. So these moderate House members are like, okay, if that's what you're going to go with, well then introduce it. Oh, you don't want to introduce it because it's horrible? Well, we've got a bill that we think is a little bit better, and is still, of course, in my opinion, as a progressive, still draconian, but less so than the Goodlatte bill. So these centrists, they're like, okay, we're just going to force this we're going to force ourselves to vote for this. We'll see how much support it actually has in the House. So there's some big infighting going on. Now, as I said before, most of the immigration bills to come out of the Republican House, again, are incredibly draconian. However, there are some, but not a lot, but some Republicans who aren't quite as draconian and might actually work with Democrats to get some sort of immigration reform. Is it everything we want as progressives? Absolutely not. But look, if we can get something like protecting the Dreamers, which are still not, protected, or giving people a pathway to citizenship, and in return, we got to put a few billion towards border security. Look, that's something that I could actually live with, right? Because look at what we get in return. We would get something that's actually a lot better for, as I said, a few wasted billion that we could, yes, definitely use somewhere else on border security. Right. Look, and the reason I say I could live with that is because we've seen far worse pieces of legislation come out of the House. And look, to be fair, in their insatiable greed and stubbornness, the fringe right has actually stopped some of the worst legislation from making it through the House. It's not because they opposed it. No, it's because it was too strong. No, they opposed it because it wasn't strong enough. It wasn't draconian enough. And so they used their power to do a little insurgency against the leadership, and they ended up sabotaging their own bill. So that's interesting. Now, there's more. Turns out there were also some disagreements on the first ACA repeal bill, as well as the tax cut law. Well, that's fascinating. Here you had Representative Rodney Frelinghuysen, who's a Republican from New Jersey. He's also chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. So this is somebody who has a very powerful position inside of the Republican House. Now, he opposed the party's initial ACA repeal bill, as well as the tax cut law. He was not in favor of that. Now, I think that's fascinating. Now, look, under this rule, here you would have Frelinghuysen, who did not vote party line on these two pieces of legislation. He could possibly lose his committeeship. And in fact, Republican leaders actually wanted to do that. Politico reported that last December, but it turns out they never actually ended up pulling the trigger. And the chairman himself announced his retirement in January. So that means they could put someone else who was far more conservative up for that Appropriations Committee spot. So that's interesting. Okay. Now, will this happen? I don't know. Look, from what I've read, Paul Ryan, he's not exactly interested in it. Look, Paul Ryan, compared to John Boehner, who did go after and who did use the leadership and their speakership to punish dissidents, has a bit of a soft touch. So, but once Paul Ryan steps down, as he is going to, who knows what's going to happen? We could end up seeing Speaker Kevin McCarthy We could end up seeing Speaker Mark Meadows, who's head of the Freedom Caucus. Could you imagine that? Disaster. That is, of course, and unless the Democrats win back the House, in which case, Speaker Pelosi, oof. Still better. Still better than Kevin McCarthy or anybody the Republicans can put up. But, of course, that's why I would love to see at least a blue wave, even if we end up getting stuck with Pelosi. Ugh. Primaries, man. Pelosi was challenged in a primary. Didn't work out, but you can always challenge her again. But anyway, as far as the story is concerned, it's pretty clear that the Republicans want to clamp down on members that don't vote the party line. Now, again, this is the House Republicans, so I don't know if they're going to try to adopt anything like that in the Senate, or even if they can. But if they did, well, that would go after people like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. These are people that do buck the leadership sometimes when it counts. So it's a way to try to excise the party of some of its more moderate members. And at this point, with the Republicans so incredibly right-wing, that is not a good thing. Now, I'm not saying that these people are our allies, but the people who replace them could be far, far worse. So, and if this effort to punish people succeeds and we don't have a check on Congress, things could be real bad. Okay. So, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We got plenty more stories. We got, of course, the immigration story. Trump, of course, the administration trying to do indefinite detention. That's a disastrous story. We got Brett Kavanaugh. And then we'll turn to more positive news, progressive news, including Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna versus Jeff Bezos. I love that story. And then, of course, minimum wage. New study out. Can't wait to share that with you. All right, guys. We'll come back right after this break. Make sure to send your super chats if you have them, or you can tweet me ATN on TYT. That is our official Twitter account. All right, guys. We'll be right back in a few minutes. Around the nation. Everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Don't have any super chats or anything like that, but let me check my Twitter, see if anything's going on over there, if you guys send any message. Negative. Okay. Moving on. Let's get into more stories then. All right. So the Trump administration is releasing a new plan that would allow children to be held in detention indefinitely with their parents. So that is the new plan. Now, right now, they can't actually do that because the government operates under the Flores settlement. The Flores settlement basically stipulates that children cannot be detained for more than 20 days. So Republicans hate that rule. They think, Flores settlement. No, I want to keep these people in prison, in jail indefinitely for crossing the border illegally or being asylum seekers. Doesn't matter. You cross the border, we're going to put you in jail, and we want to keep you in jail. Now, of course, they tried to do that as a deterrent, but thanks to the Flores settlement, they had to separate the families. So that led, of course, to the crisis of family separation, and we all know what happened in that. Federal judges said you can't actually keep them in prison. You've got to reunite these families. Now, despite that, the Trump administration, there's over 500 families right now that have not been reunited. Their parents are just gone. So when they go, you know, the kids are still there. Their kids are still in custody. They're now considered unaccompanied minors because they deported their parents already. Sorry, kid, we don't know where your parents are at. And for some of the ones that have been actually reunited, it's been nothing but heartbreaking scenes. Some kids are mad at their parents. Some kids don't even know who their parents are. So that's the legacy of this. And now the administration, the Trump administration, their solution to this is now to allow children to be put into jail indefinitely with their parents. Wow. Now let me have some, let me get into more details about how they're going to sidestep this rule. The administration is proposing a regulation that would replace the Flores settlement, which is basically an agreement that we don't put people in jail or put children in jail with their parents for over 20 days. Now, on Friday, the Departments of Homeland Security and Health and Human Services will officially publish a draft of the new regulation. That's today, so that should be coming out fairly soon. Now, here's what that proposed regulation would actually do. It would tighten the standards for releasing migrant children from detention. Right now, most adults who arrive in the U.S., according to Vox, without legal status have to be kept in immigrant detention while they're put through expedited deportation proceedings. Asylum seekers are allowed to be released into the U.S. while they fight their asylum case, but only after they've passed a preliminary credible fear screening. Now, that could take weeks. Now, the reason that they're doing that, by the way, is that you hear a lot of conservative arguments like, oh, no, we can't just let them go because none of them are returned to court. And they just go into the country illegally and then they go and take your jobs. No, that's not what happens. 80% of these cases, people come back. Oh, well, what about the 20%? Well, then you figure out a way to track them better. You don't just keep them in jail indefinitely. That's not how you solve this problem. But they're not interested in solving the problem, as I'm going to get to later. Now, there's more. Now, here's the thing. So Judge Dolly G, who is the judge that basically oversees the Flores settlement. So she was one of the deciding votes. Now, she interpreted it to mean that the government had discretion to release children from custody and ordered DHS to make a continuous effort to release children from immigration custody, even if they were with their parents. So she said, look, I don't want these people in jail. I don't want these families in jail together. We should release them. We should at least release the children. No, they're not interested in that. The new proposal holds everyone in DHS custody, children and parents alike, to the same standard that is more restrictive. Children deemed unaccompanied will still be sent to the Department of Health and Human Services, to be sent God knows where, but children arriving with their parents will be detained for as long as the government deems necessary. So now we have given the government they want to give the government power to say, we want to hold these children indefinitely. Again, it is up to their discretion. The Florida settlement says, no, we're going to put a limit on that, 20 days. We know you want to keep them longer, but we think that is that is cruel. So we're not going to do that. And Trump wants to waive this. And again, why is that? Well, it's because, and you're not going to be shocked by this, there are giant corporations that want to keep people in prison because they end up making money. Now, let me give you more details and how disastrous that'll be, and how the rules will allow more private prisons to be able to hold immigrants. Now, the rule would also change licensing of the facilities that some of these families will be held in. The proposed regulation would let the government detain families and audit the facility later, and also would declare that any facility that was audited by a third party, doesn't matter who, to make sure it met the standards, would qualify as a licensed facility. So we're just going to, first, we're going to house all these immigrants. We're going to basically imprison them indefinitely, so for as long as we want. And then we're going to decide what facilities they can go into. Oh, look at that. We have a big for-profit prison industry that is already holding large amounts of immigrants that are here, that are undocumented, that are here illegally. Why not steer more business towards them so they can make more money? The administration is in league with private prisons. They want more people to fill the beds. Well, what's more perfect than asylum seekers and unaccompanied children? They do this because they're gigantic donors. If you didn't know already, follow the money. Look, here's the thing. Corrections Corporation of America was one of the biggest donors to Trump's inauguration. They gave a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars, to Trump's inauguration party. When Trump won, their stocks had an enormous boom. This is after the Obama administration had put in certain reforms, or had pushed for certain reforms that wanted to tamp down on the private prison industry, and we gave him a lot of credit for that. Here comes Trump, completely reversing that, and actually making sure that private prisons have an even bigger role in interring people. And of course, with this, they get their dream. Because now, these private prisons are going to get to hold immigrants indefinitely. And they're going to make so much money. Now, here's the thing. Another way that they're going to make money off this is now that they can be licensed as a facility and audited by third parties, well, that means they can get away with terrible conditions. In fact, we had terrible conditions even before this. And let me give you an example of some of those. We had kids that were, of course, put in cages. Oh, no, they're fences. No, they're cages. Not only that, but there were some places that were giving children psychotropic drugs in order to pacify them. Not only that, but there were families in cells that were so cold, they were nicknamed the icebox. These people ended up sleeping on floors and were given an aluminum blanket. These are already terrible conditions. Now we want to make them even worse. But again, that's the whole point. That's the whole plan. They want to discourage people from coming into the United States, and the way that they're going to do it is to treat them so horribly, to dehumanize them so much that they won't want to be here, that they will want to go home. So we're going to treat people asylum seekers, people running from death, like subhumans, like animals. And if, again, that's not bad enough, the Trump administration is working very, very hard to make it worse. They want to say, oh, no, you don't understand. It's the criminals, or it's the immigrants who are the criminals. It's the immigrants who are the terrible ones. It's the bad ones. Well, maybe they should look in a mirror. Okay. I think I'm fairly clear on that. So Brett Kavanaugh is currently in the middle of a confirmation hearing for the Supreme Court. Now, Democrats, of course, decided to go through his case records in order to try to make a case against him, while Republicans are doing the same to make a case for him. And I think that's a ridiculous way to do this. I'll explain what I would rather have Democrats do in order to actually fight Brett Kavanaugh, but we'll get to that in a minute. Look, overall, I think that this whole thing is political theater, right? We already largely know who the Republicans are going to vote for, which way most Republicans are going to go. But what's important here, what is at stake is policy, right? So while you have like Cory Booker grandstanding and Kamala Harris, and you have, of course, Republicans continuing to push on because it is the Trump nominee, and that's going to help them in re-election. Look, we got 2 Supreme Court justices. Vote for us. There is actually policy at stake. And one of the major pieces of policy that may make its way to the Supreme Court again is reproductive rights. So on the question of birth control, Kavanaugh had told senators that he believed that birth control is, quote, an abortion-inducing drug. Wait a minute. Birth control, abortion-inducing. That's not at all true. So now I'm going to give some context here and then get into how wrong he is. Now, Judge Kavanaugh was responding to a question from Senator Ted Cruz on Thursday about his 2015 dissent in the Priests for Life versus HHS case. Kavanaugh had sided with, of course, the Priests for Life, which did not want to provide employees with insurance coverage for birth control. Now, the organization had filed a lawsuit against the Department of Health and Human Services in 2013 over the provision under the ACA that required certain healthcare providers to cover birth control. Now, the group argues the provision was a violation of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the same premise of the Hobby Lobby lawsuit in 2014. Now, a panel for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit ruled against Priests for Life in 2014 when the group tried and failed to get a full court hearing the next year. Now, Kavanaugh, of course, was part of that case, and he had dissented. In his dissent, he had dissented from the majority opinion against the Priests for Life, but he had said, hey, man, look, I would rule in favor of you because I don't think companies should have to pay for birth control, right, through your insurance. Right. Now, hold on here. You say you're pro-life. Isn't the best way to be pro-life, to prevent abortion, is to help people get birth control? Doesn't that make any sense? I believe it does. If you want less abortion, then you should have more birth control. You should allow people to have access to birth control. It should be easier to get it, not harder. But Kavanaugh, of course, like a lot of these, some of these pro-life conservatives, are like, no. We believe that birth control is immoral. Again, he said it's an abortion-inducing drug. But it doesn't induce abortions. It prevents pregnancy. And beyond that, it actually helps women with other health issues. For example, women with endometriosis take it. So, and there's a lot of different things, conditions that taking birth control helps with. It helps to regulate women's cycles. And look, again, I'm not afraid to get into that because that's health, that's science. Those are facts. But anyway, more importantly, it does empower women to participate in daily life in the workforce. Calling it akin to abortion, because keep it real, that's exactly what he's doing, is a way to outlaw something that 95% of American women use. But Kavanaugh says, nope, I would vote against birth control. Why? Again, there's a couple of reasons why. For one, of course, he calls himself pro-life, and he's apparently not well-versed on the facts and the science, but there's another angle to it. He is pro-corporate. Judge Kavanaugh is an incredibly pro-corporate judge. In fact, most of his decisions, I think somewhere around 85% of his decisions, were in favor of corporations. So, look, here's him saying these companies should not have to offer contraception as part of the birth control package. That helps the companies because the companies end up saving money. So, again, here's another pro-corporate position. Not only that, but of course, the whole purpose behind this by the Priest for Life is let's go backwards. Let's be the American Taliban and go and eliminate birth control. Let's get rid of it. It's not pro-life. It is an effort to control women's bodies. And in Judge Kavanaugh, these people and the companies that will profit from this, you have a staunch ally. Now, what should we do about Kavanaugh? Well, as I said before, these meetings are a bit of a farce, right? So everybody knows who they're going to vote for. There may be a couple of questions on a couple of moderate Republicans, but at the end, I think at the end of the day, they probably will vote to confirm him. But there's one way you can stop him. Walk out. Democrats, walk out. Don't give them quorum. Delay. Delay till November. Use the same dirty trick that McConnell used. Oh no, we can't confirm a Supreme Court justice while there's an election. Well, there's literally an election a couple months away. There's a midterms, and it's an incredibly important election. Sorry, can't do it. We're not going to meet. We're not going to do quorum. Sad day for you, Republicans. That's what they need to do. It's what they need to do. Because, look, there might be a blue wave in November. And then there is no hope of a Judge Kavanaugh being passed through. Stop him. That is the only way you can stop him at this point. Are the Democrats going to do that? I don't know. I think it's very, very unlikely. But if they do, they should. If they actually care about this, they should. Because Kavanaugh can't wait to get out there and rule in favor of corporations and to take away your right to birth control. I think I'm fairly clear about that. Okay. Let's go to some positive news. So Bernie Sanders, as promised, just released a new piece of legislation called the Stop Bad Employers by Zeroing Out Subsidies Act. I think we know exactly who it was aimed against because that spells out Stop Bezos, which is 100% trolling. Love it. Now, details of the bill, and I talked about this before. They would establish a 100% tax on corporations with 500 or more employees, equal to the amount of federal benefits received by their low-wage workers. For example, if a worker at Amazon received $2,000 in food stamps, the employer would be taxed at $2,000 to cover the cost. So, great. Well, for one, that makes sense, because if we are using taxpayer money to subsidize a worker that should be being paid enough of a wage for them to be able to live without government assistance, well then, if you use that government assistance as a subsidy, then maybe Amazon should pay that back. Just saying. Now, Senators Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders, by the way, Ro Khanna, of course, is a progressive Justice Democrat. He has introduced a companion bill in the House. Both of them got together and they decided to write an op-ed in Time magazine explaining their bill. Okay. Now, first they point out how Republicans hate welfare. They hate welfare. They write, Republicans in Washington have lectured the American people about the need for welfare reform. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan rallied against a fictitious welfare queen driving a Cadillac. Just a few years ago, Republicans turned their attention to a young surfer who used a food stamp program to purchase lobster. That was all over Fox News. I remember watching that. I remember doing stories about that. Now, they say if you listen closely, though, you will never hear much talk from our Republican colleagues about some of the biggest welfare recipients in America, the billionaire owners of some of the most profitable corporations in our country. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because they love welfare. Look, and they love it when it goes to their real constituents, the corporations. And think of the return on investment. When a corporation buys a politician, you know, they give a few $1,000s, $10,000, $20,000 for an election cycle, sometimes more, sometimes less, $500,000, but they get millions in tax cuts. That is an enormous return on investment, and that actually is also an unfair playing field, because the small business, well, they can't buy a politician. Even though politicians do come cheap, there are, look, a lot of companies that could definitely pay far, far more to buy these congressmen and get giant tax cuts. So, now, Sanders and Khanna, specifically with this bill, point out one of those large companies, Amazon, and its founder, Jeff Bezos, who is now worth over $160 billion. He is the richest man on earth, literally. They write that since the beginning of this year, his wealth has increased by about $277 million a day. Can you imagine that? Making $277 million a day. I couldn't imagine. All right. Now, meanwhile, Mr. Bezos continues to pay many thousands of his Amazon employees wages that are so low that they must rely on food stamps, Medicaid, or public housing in order to survive. In effect, the middle-class taxpayers of this country are subsidizing the low wages paid by the richest person on earth. That's nuts. Now, let me give you some facts here. The average wage for an Amazon employee is around $13 an hour. Now, that actually includes managers, which kind of skews higher than the people in the warehouses on the ground. Okay? And benefits, well, look, there are some positions that do offer benefits at Amazon. However, if you need Medicaid, well, then the health benefits are obviously either not very good or non-existent. As for food stamps, well, according to a study by the New Food Economy, as many as 1 in 3 Amazon employees in Arizona and about 1 in 10 in Pennsylvania and Ohio currently receive food stamps. That's a lot of people, man. And especially when you look at how many people are employed by Amazon, it's in the tens of thousands of people. Why are we subsidizing Amazon for not paying people enough? It's not like we want people on government benefits. No, we want employers to actually pay people so that they don't have to go on government benefits. And it's not much to ask a $1 trillion company headed by the richest man alive to be able to pay that. Now, Sanders continues. But Jeff Bezos and Amazon are not alone. And he makes some examples here. The Walton family of Walmart and many other billionaire-owned large and profitable corporations also get richer because of taxpayer support for their low-paid employees. The Walton family of Walmart is the wealthiest family in the country with a net worth of over $160 billion. This one family has owned more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans. Meanwhile, just like Amazon, Walmart pays its workers wages that are so inadequate that many of them are forced to depend on public assistance programs at a cost of some $6.2 billion a year to taxpayers in order to survive. But the answer is not take away these programs. The answer is make Walmart and some of these large employers actually pay their workers. Share the wealth that the workers generate. Again, Walmart wouldn't be successful without workers. Amazon wouldn't be successful without workers. It's impossible. You cannot be successful without people to work in your warehouses, without people to actually work in your stores. If you're doing incredibly well, you should probably share that with your workers. But unfortunately, we have a system set up where that is not what they do, and they do it on purpose. Now, to get back to Sanders here, they write, the fast food industry is another major recipient of corporate welfare. Well, the co-owner of Burger King, Jorge Paulo Lemon, has a net worth of about $25 billion. Low wages at his fast food chain cost U.S. taxpayers an estimated $356 million per year. And it's not just Burger King. McDonald's workers are actually encouraged to sign up for government assistance, meaning the company fully acknowledges that it pays its employees wages that are non-livable. And I do remember seeing the McDonald's budget plan. Speaking of that, how you can't live on that. It had spaces for 2 jobs and a heat bill of 0. I'm sorry, I understand some of the southern states, and I understand climate change, but there is a significant part of the country that actually does have to pay a heat bill. What then? What then? Okay. In total, 52% of all fast food workers rely on public assistance programs to make ends meet. And you know what? There are companies out there that actually do pay their employees a living wage, and they're still incredibly profitable. So don't say that, oh, no, we can't do that because that'll destroy our business. That is complete bullshit. That is an absolute lie. But wait, he's not done. There are more corporate offenders. While American Airlines made $2 billion in net profits last year, and its CEO is on track to make $31 million in total compensation this year, 27% of workers at its subsidiary, Envoy Air, which has over 16,000 employees, need food stamps and other forms of public assistance because of the inadequate wages they receive. Furthermore, he says, the working families and middle class of this country should not have to subsidize the wealthiest people in the United States. That is absurd. That's what a rigged economy is all about. Right now, we pay for Amazon. We're giving money to Jeff Bezos. That comes out of our pockets. Why are the taxpayers having to subsidize the richest man alive? Please tell me why. Why should we be doing this? This is corporate welfare. It's not capitalism. None of the companies that do this are operating under capitalism. When you have to rely on the government, whether it be tax incentives, because look, Walmart is very famous for moving into areas, getting a bunch of subsidies, getting a bunch of tax incentives, and through that, this is stuff that these small businesses don't have. Those small businesses go out of business. They're driven out of business because Walmart has a competitive advantage. They get all these tax cuts and things like that, and then they're able to charge incredibly low prices. They have supply chain advantages. They use those advantages to crush all the competition. And then, when the tax cuts dry up, they leave. They abandon their stores. That's how we get food deserts. That's how entire towns and communities are absolutely devastated. We allow that system to happen. That is not capitalism. Conservatives, you should be angry. Free market, guys, where are you? Now, look, Tucker Carlson called out Amazon. And look, I thought that was interesting. But at the end, he's like, it's the left that's doing it. No, it's not the left that's doing it. It's absurd. The left actually hates corporate welfare just as much as you do. That's why we actually like this bill. We like what Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna are doing. We're calling on these companies to actually start paying their employees because they can afford to do so. We hate what Amazon and Bezos are doing right now, and Walmart and the rest. But with much of the establishment right, they love that corporate welfare. They get rich off that corporate welfare. That's why they want to keep it. For everyone else on the right that argues that this is a good thing, that we should have less regulation on business, that's where this leads. That's where this leads. When you mandate that companies be amoral machines programmed to make profit, and that is their only program, you then unleash them into the markets with no regulation, this is what happens. This is what happens. Combine that with the corrupt campaign finance system, and you get this mess. This bill should be so easy to pass. It should be incredibly popular on both sides of the aisle, left and right. The fact that everybody, whenever they cover this piece of legislation, say, it will never pass. It's dead on arrival. That shows you exactly what is wrong with our system. Okay. I want to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll do the last story here. Minimum wage. You'll love that. And then we'll end the show. So stay right here. We'll read some super chats after we get back from the break. So stay right here. We'll be right back. Around the Nation. All right, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Okay. A couple of things before I get into the last story here. Got a couple of super chats. First one here is from Nature Boy. Thank you. He says, always watch and never contribute. Your critical voice in the era of Trump and corporate Democrats. Thank you. And I really appreciate that. Again, super chats are what help fund the show. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you supporting us. Okay. Coffee Crow says, I've said it before, but the family business I work for give out regular bonuses and yearly raises to its 20-something people. So Bezos, Amazon, all of them, they're full of shit and greedy. Couldn't agree more. Also, for one, you sound like you run a great business, and that's awesome. Can I come work for you? No. Kidding, but I'm sure there are a lot of people that would love to work for a business like that. And it just shows you're absolutely right. These businesses absolutely can do that, but they instead choose to pad their own pockets. And that's what's wrong with a lot of businesses these days. All right. There's that. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Also, Joey Peltier on Twitter says, asked me if I would mind mentioning the anti-Trump, anti-Kavanaugh rally in Fargo, North Dakota. So apparently the DSA is hosting a rally that is against Donald Trump. Of course, Donald Trump, I believe, was in Billings? I don't know if that's in North Dakota to give a recent rally, but it's good to see that there are people that are rallying against both Donald Trump and, of course, Brett Kavanaugh. So, yeah. So, that's really all I know about that. But okay. Anyway, let's go to the last story. Okay. Increasing the minimum wage above $10 helps workers and creates jobs instead of hurts them, according to a new analysis. Now, that, of course, goes against what many conservative policy analysts and pundits claim whenever the issue of raising wages comes around. Now, this study, done by Berkeley Center on Wage and Employment Dynamics, found that in the 6 major U.S. cities to raise their minimum wage above $10 an hour, workers' earnings went up while job growth either held steady or improved. Huh. Oh, but wait a minute. We're told that if we were to raise the minimum wage, that it would actually hurt workers, their wages would decrease, and jobs would go away. Well, that is not the case. Now, let me tell you how they got to this conclusion. Drawing on data from the Labor Department, the economists found that across the 6 cities studied, a 10% increase in the minimum wage boosted weekly earnings in the food services industry by an average of 1.3 and 2.5% by the end of 2016. Meanwhile, their models pegged the wage hike's impact on jobs to a range of 0.3% reduction or a 1.1% increase. So I would say very modest job growth, but definitely not hugely negative. So what we have here is more people making more money, doing better, taking home more money to their families, and being able to spend that in the economy, and jobs increasing modestly as a result. Now, Sylvia Allegretto said, we find that they are working just as the policymakers and voters who enacted these policies intended. Wow, wait, a policy doing what was intended. And not only that, but everybody knew that was the whole purpose of that policy. Yes, we want to make sure workers get paid better and that jobs also increase. Well, congratulations, raising the minimum wage has achieved both. Great. In fact, Allegretto continues, so far they are raising the earnings of low-wage workers without causing significant employment loss. But see, that's the thing. It always does that. We have raised the minimum wage a great many times. And every time you hear the same argument. It's going to hurt workers. It's going to cause us to go out of business. Are these companies go out of business? Absolutely not. In fact, they're actually doing incredibly well. So, not only that, Berkeley's researchers had also reached a similar conclusion in a 2017 study of a higher minimum wage impact solely in Seattle. Now, there was a bit of contention with that, with another study saying, no, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. But of course, there were numerous flaws in that other study that Berkeley had pointed out. Now, that's not the only study. The Economic Policy Institute had also demonstrated that states that raised their minimum wages back in 2016, many through ballot initiatives, saw much stronger wage growth among workers in the bottom decile, the bottom 10%, of the income distribution without a large loss of jobs. So, here you have it. You can actually make people's lives better by raising the minimum wage and not have job losses. This isn't a zero-sum game. You can do both. Unlike what the restaurant industry tells us. I mean, look, what we have is so many incredibly wealthy corporations that can afford to pay for their workers higher wages. And I think they can even afford a living wage. If you're talking about large chains like McDonald's, like Burger King, etc., these companies can afford to pay their workers a living wage, but they choose not to. And look, unfortunately, there's a large section of the American public who even works in these industries or who doesn't, but used to, maybe when they were younger. Number one, they're convinced that, oh, there's just a job for teenagers, which is not true. If you look at the data, a lot of people working in these fast food jobs are actually middle-aged and have families. Not only that, but of course, look, you have propaganda from conservative think tanks that say if you raise the wages, then again, you're going to have job losses and you're going to have all these companies going out of business, or they're going to somehow turn around and screw the worker. Well, they're already screwing the workers. They're already screwing the workers. And so we need to do something to stop that. They bring this up every time we try to raise the minimum wage. But it's not true. It's not true. And they say this. Oh, while the richest CEOs get paid millions of dollars in compensation. There is no reason. Look, I understand being against a wage. No, actually, I don't even scratch that. No. There's no reason that in an economy with 3.9% unemployment, that the federal minimum wage should continue to be $7.25 an hour. That's not what we should be doing. We should be raising the wages. We should have a living wage tied to inflation. Forget what you see on Fox News. We know it works. We know it works. We know it helps workers. We know it even helps corporations. We got to stop them from getting away with propaganda. But again, this is what happens when you have these amoral machines, these companies that do, like, their main concern, their main program is to maximize profit. And they will do that by crushing the workers and by crushing the other people and by taking money from, of course, the government in the form of subsidies. Because that's what it is. When you don't pay your worker a wage they can live on and they go and take money from the government in the form of food stamps, welfare programs, that is a subsidy to that company. They pocket the difference. They pocket that money. Now, we've got to stop them from getting away with this propaganda and actually make these employers pay a living wage. It is past time. There is no excuse. We need a living wage. We need the dignity of work. We need economic dignity. And we need it now. Okay. All right. Hey, man, that's it. Thanks, guys. We're going off for the weekend. We'll be back on Monday. So, guys, have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe. Have fun. We'll see you on Monday, same time, same place, right here around the nation. Make sure, as I said, follow me on Twitter, ATN on TYT. That's our Twitter handle, or me personally at Jeff's Politics. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Love you guys. Thank you for supporting us. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, guys. We'll see you on Monday.